You were the smart kid, so why do you feel so lost now? Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, how did I get here? You were the smart kid, the one who figured things out faster than everyone else. The one who teachers praised, parents bragged about, and friends envied. You were supposed to be ahead of the curve. So why now, as an adult, do you feel stuck, numb, and quietly unraveling? You wake up every day and wear the face of competence. Your job title looks respectable. Your LinkedIn profile is polished. From the outside, it seems like you're doing just fine. But deep inside, you feel disconnected, like life is happening around you, not through you. Like you're watching a movie you were supposed to star in, but somehow got cast as an extra. You know how to talk about ideas, but not about feelings. You solve problems for others, but can't seem to solve the emptiness inside yourself. And perhaps the most painful part, you don't even know why. The very intelligence that once made you special now feels like a cage. And no matter how hard you try to think your way out of it, you only go in circles. Carl Jung once warned us, what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. Maybe that's the real problem. Not that you're not smart enough, but that you've spent your whole life resisting what your intellect can't control. Vulnerability, uncertainty, failure, and emotion. You were praised for always having the answer, but no one ever told you how to sit with a question. And now, all those parts of yourself you've ignored, the doubt, the fear, the messiness of being human, have grown too large to contain. They leak into your relationships, your self-worth, and your silence. You feel like a fraud, even though nothing on the surface suggests it. But what if this feeling isn't a flaw? What if it's a signal, a whisper from the part of you that's been buried beneath the identity of the smart one? Maybe this pain isn't your enemy. Maybe it's your beginning. The praise trap. When smart becomes a prison. Being called smart feels like a gift when you're young. It's like receiving a secret badge of honor. Every time you solve a problem quickly, finish a test early, or say something clever, adults light up. We start to realize that your intelligence isn't just a trait. It's your currency. It's what makes you lovable, valuable, and worthy. And that's when the trap begins. Because slowly, without meaning to, you start to believe that your worth comes from how easily things come to you. You're not praised for working hard or struggling with something difficult. You're praised for getting it right the first time, for being exceptional, for not needing help. You learn that being smart isn't just about thinking, it's about performing. So what happens the moment something becomes hard? You freeze. You hesitate to raise your hand in class unless you're absolutely sure. You avoid competitions unless you're certain you'll win. You steer clear of opportunities that might reveal you as anything less than brilliant. Because the risk isn't just failure, it's identity collapse. If you're not the smart one, then who are you? This is the praise trap, and it's far more damaging than people realize. Because it doesn't just affect how you approach academics, it shapes how you engage with life. When every challenge becomes a threat to your self-worth, you stop growing, you stay in your lane, you prioritize looking competent over becoming whole. Carl Jung had a name for this mask we wear, the persona. It's the identity we create to be accepted by the world. The problem isn't the mask itself. Everyone has one. The danger is when you confuse the mask for your true self. You forget that you're more than just the sharp kid, more than your accolades, more than the person who always had the answers. The gifted child becomes the anxious adult, the one who dreads trying new things, the one who procrastinates not because they're lazy, but because they're terrified of not being excellent. You may recognize this in your own life. Maybe you were the honor student, the straight-A kid, the one who teachers said was going places. And now, when faced with something new, whether it's a career pivot, a vulnerable conversation, or a creative risk, you feel paralyzed. Not because you can't do it, but because you're afraid it will expose you. I've spoken to dozens of high-performing adults who feel exactly this. Lawyers who dream of writing novels but are too afraid to suck at it. Engineers who avoid public speaking because it makes them feel clumsy. Doctors who fear intimacy because they can't control how they'll be seen. Underneath all the success lies a fragile self, one that has never been allowed to fail, to fumble, to just be human. That's the shadow side of being the smart kid. Intelligence becomes armor. Not a tool for exploration, but a barrier to experience. You analyze instead of feel. You perform instead of connecting. You stay safe, but you stay small. Jung warned that when the persona takes over, we disconnect from our deeper self, our true instincts, desires, and emotions. We start living for the approval of others, rather than alignment with ourselves. And over time, this creates a silent kind of suffering. Not the loud crisis of a breakdown, but the quiet ache of disconnection, of not quite knowing who you are beyond the mask. Think about it. When was the last time you let yourself be a beginner? When was the last time you tried something without needing to be great at it? When was the last time you failed and let it teach you something instead of shaming you? If you've spent your life protecting your image, you've probably missed out on a lot of living. But here's the good news. Intelligence is not the enemy. The trap isn't being smart. The trap is believing that's all you're allowed to be. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be whole. And wholeness includes the parts that are messy, uncertain, and unfinished. The parts that don't win awards. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when emotional development is left behind in the pursuit of perfection, and how it silently undermines your ability to connect, belong, and feel truly alive. The ego crisis, when persona replaces the soul. Carl Jung once wrote that the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent. But what if the greatest burden we carry as adults is the unlived life of ourselves, the parts we've denied, disowned, and disqualified in service of being who we're supposed to be? The moment your intelligence became your identity, your ego began to mold itself around that singular trait. And while the world celebrated this persona, this polished, articulate, high-functioning version of you, your deeper self began to go silent, not by accident, but by design. According to Jung, the persona is the social mask we wear to navigate the world. It helps us fit in, gain approval, and play our roles effectively. But here's the danger. When we begin to identify with the mask more than with the self behind it, we lose access to our inner truth. We become spectators in our own lives, competent, admired, and completely disconnected. Behind the persona lies what Jung called the shadow, the repressed, denied parts of our psyche. It includes not only the negative traits, like envy, fear, and rage, but also the vulnerable parts, insecurity, failure, imperfection. When we suppress these aspects in favor of maintaining our polished image, we don't destroy them, we drive them underground. And from there, they begin to operate in silence, sabotaging our confidence, distorting our relationships, and fueling our anxiety. That is the paradox of repression. What we refuse to feel doesn't disappear, it festers. Jung famously warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Many gifted individuals, outwardly accomplished, inwardly suffer because they've built their identities in opposition to their full humanity. Their brilliance is real but incomplete. Their competence is sharp but fragile. Enter Friedrich Nietzsche, who captured this truth with poetic brutality. One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. Chaos, the very thing we were taught to avoid. The messiness of failure, the awkwardness of not knowing, the humility of beginning again. But Nietzsche, like Jung, believed that transformation does not come through comfort. It comes through the confrontation of the darkness, the disorder, the unfinished corners of ourselves. To grow, you must dare to be stupid again. To risk failing, not to lose your dignity, but to reclaim your soul. The chaos within isn't there to destroy you. It's there to wake you, to remind you that you are more than the persona you wear. That the parts you hide might be the keys to the person you were meant to become. Modern culture idolizes confidence and clarity, but both Jung and Nietzsche insisted that uncertainty and contradiction are not flaws. They are invitations. Jung called this the path of individuation, the process of integrating all parts of the self, including the shadow, to become whole. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real. When you spend your life clinging to the smart kid identity, you amputate everything that doesn't fit that image. You hide your emotional needs. You deny your fear of failure. You downplay your curiosity if it makes you feel naive. And in doing so, you live half a life. Safe, successful, but starving. Think of the people who inspire you, not because they're flawless, but because they're whole. The ones who can speak with strength and softness, who can be brilliant and still say, "I don't know," who can succeed and still carry the humility of a beginner's heart. These are not people who escaped their shadow. They integrated it. They faced the inner chaos and came out not just wiser, but freer. This is the invitation now. Not to abandon your intelligence, but to expand beyond it. To make space for the messy, emotional, irrational parts you've locked away. Because they are not your weakness. They are the missing pieces of your humanity. Jung reminded us, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. So ask yourself, what have you cut off to protect the identity of being smart? What part of you has been exiled for the sake of excellence? And more importantly, are you ready to bring it home? The intellectual armor, when empathy becomes a wall. At some point, the gifted child, now an adult, begins to feel the loneliness of emotional starvation. But instead of seeking connection, they double down on what they know best, their mind. Because thinking has always been safe. Thinking got them praise. Thinking gave them control. And when feelings become overwhelming or confusing, intellect becomes a shield. This is where the concept of cognitive empathy often takes over. You might understand what someone is feeling. You can read their facial expressions, decode their tone, and predict their reactions. But you don't feel it with them. You stand at a distance, analyzing rather than experiencing. You connect with others like a chess player predicts moves. Not from the heart, but from strategy. On the surface, it looks like you're socially adept. You say the right things, make insightful comments, and even offer comfort. But inside, you're exhausted because every interaction becomes a performance, a calculation, a game of internal simulations designed to avoid rejection, awkwardness, or vulnerability. This is where emotional disconnection deepens into what Jung would call defensive arrogance. You tell yourself, "I'm not like other people." You start to believe that the reason you don't connect deeply isn't because you're afraid, but because you're somehow above connection. You label others as shallow, ordinary, and too obsessed with trivial things. And while that narrative protects your ego, it imprisons your heart. Because here's the truth. When you say they're not like me, what you often mean is, "I don't know how to belong." You don't believe you're superior. You believe you're broken. But superiority is a more bearable lie than loneliness. Alan Watts, the philosopher of paradox, once said, "Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth." In other words, when you use thought to solve the crisis of identity, you only spin in circles. You can't think your way into being. You can't rationalize your way into love. And you can't analyze your way out of emotional hunger. But that's exactly what many smart kids try to do. They build complex theories to explain why they feel numb. They write journals full of insight, but avoid one honest conversation. They know what they're feeling, but not how to feel it. The mind becomes a refuge and a trap. This is not a judgment, it's a survival mechanism. When emotional development is neglected in favor of intellectual growth, the result is a brilliant mind with no roadmap for intimacy. So you construct walls, not made of stone, but of logic. I just don't relate to people. I overthink too much for regular friendships. I'm too deep for surface-level conversations. And slowly, you stop trying. You drift further from connection. Not because you don't need it, but because you've forgotten how to reach for it without fear. But here's the problem. Connection doesn't require brilliance. It requires presence. It requires allowing yourself to be seen, not just understood. It requires sitting with another person in silence, not analyzing their pain, but feeling it. It requires imperfection, awkwardness, and the willingness to sometimes say the wrong thing in pursuit of something real. Defensive arrogance tells you it's safer not to try. Cognitive empathy tells you you can fake your way through it. But your body knows the difference. And over time, the loneliness becomes unbearable. So what now? You could keep refining the mask, keep building the illusion that you're different, untouchable, fine. Or you could risk everything and start showing up without it. You're not too smart to connect. You're just too scared to be seen. But the irony is, the moment you allow someone to see you, not the persona, not the polished intellect, but the messy, unfinished, human you, that's when true belonging begins. In the next part, we'll explore how to dismantle this armor and begin building a new identity. One that's not based on being extraordinary, but on being fully, imperfectly alive. From performance to presence. Rebuilding the self. You were told you were smart, maybe even gifted. And for years, that identity kept you afloat. It gave you a sense of purpose, direction, superiority even. But now it's time to let it go. Not because intelligence is the problem, but because tying your worth to it is a trap. When your entire self-concept is built around being the smart one, every challenge becomes a threat. Every failure feels like an existential crisis. Every misstep shakes your foundation. The first step to reclaiming yourself is this. You must stop identifying as the smart kid. Not in the sense of rejecting your abilities, but in the deeper sense of realizing that intelligence is not your essence. It's a tool, a gift, a part of you, but not the whole. You are not your SAT score. You are not your GPA. You are not the compliments you got for finishing first or knowing the answer. You are something far more complex, fragile, and beautifully human. Carl Jung called this return to the authentic self individuation. It's the process of becoming whole, not perfect, not polished, but integrated. It's when you stop trying to be impressive and start trying to be real. When you stop chasing applause and start seeking truth. When you stop performing and start living. And this journey begins with one uncomfortable but liberating shift. Embracing your imperfections. You've likely spent a lifetime avoiding the messy, vulnerable, flawed parts of yourself. The parts that get things wrong, that freezes under pressure, that feels lonely, jealous, and insecure. But those aren't defects, they're doorways. They are the neglected parts of your soul, waiting not to be fixed, but to be accepted. To individuate is to bring those parts home. To say, I am not just the parts of me that shine. I am also the parts that tremble, ache, and falter. This is how you begin to rebuild, not from performance, but from presence. And yes, it will be awkward. You'll try new things and feel like a beginner. You'll open up emotionally and feel exposed. You'll sit in the discomfort of not being the best, and it will bruise your ego. But that bruising, that's how you know you're healing. You were not born to be a trophy. You were born to be a person. So try the thing you might be bad at. Join the conversation even if you're not the smartest in the room. Ask for help. Admit when you don't know. Say something clumsy. Let yourself fail. Because every time you do, you chip away at the false identity and build a real one in its place. One rooted not in achievement, but in growth. Not in being better than others, but in being yourself, fully and without apology. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to be extraordinary, you start feeling whole. You stop striving to prove you're enough and begin discovering that you already are. This is not an easy path. It goes against everything you've been taught. You were trained to chase gold stars, not inner peace. But peace doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being present, from standing in your own life with both feet, exactly as you are. So what does this look like practically? It means joining that group or class, even if you feel behind. It means letting your creativity out, even if it's unpolished. It means calling someone just to say, "Hey, I don't have it all figured out." It means showing up to your own life, not as the polished, high-achieving prodigy, but as a messy, evolving human being. And in that process, something miraculous happens. Connection returns. Joy returns. You begin to feel again, not just perform. You begin to live. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But that privilege requires courage. It requires dismantling the image you spent years perfecting and trusting that who you are underneath is enough. You are not here to impress the world. You are here to meet yourself. In the next and final part, we'll explore what happens when you finally step off the pedestal into the messy, ordinary, breathtaking world of real life and discover that it's not so lonely after all. The awakening. You don't have to be extraordinary, just real. So here we are. After years of striving, performing, analyzing, and overthinking, maybe you're starting to feel it. The quiet realization that being the smart one isn't enough anymore. That the identity that once carried you is now the very thing that's weighing you down. And maybe for the first time in a long time, you're ready to ask a different question. Not, how can I be impressive? But, what if I just showed up as I am? Here's the truth most people won't say out loud. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room to belong in it. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to be eloquent, polished, productive, or exceptional every moment of your life. You just need to be willing to be present. To walk into the room, heart open, even when you're unsure. To speak, even when your voice trembles. To try, even if you might fail. To say, "I'm here." Not because you've earned the right to be, but because you exist. And that on its own is enough. Because the more you chase excellence as a condition for worth, the more life will feel like a performance. And the longer you wait to feel ready, the more you'll miss the raw, imperfect beauty of living. This is your invitation. Stop trying to be extraordinary. Start trying to be real. Take off the mask of the smart one, not with bitterness, but with love. Thank you for protecting yourself, for helping you survive, and then let it rest. Because the world doesn't need another brilliant but empty shell. It needs you. Carl Jung believed that healing doesn't come from perfection. It comes from integration. Embrace your flaws, your fears, your desires, and your dreams. From owning your story, even the messy chapters. From stepping down from the pedestal, and finally planting your feet on the ground where real people live, love, and stumble. And once you do that, once you begin living with presence instead of performance, something shifts. You reconnect. You soften. You feel. Not because you've become someone better, but because you finally allowed yourself to become someone real. And maybe, just maybe, that's what you've been searching for all along. If this message stirred something in you, if even one part of it felt like it put words to a feeling you couldn't explain, then don't let it end here. Like this video if it resonated. Subscribe to the channel if you're ready for more content that doesn't just speak to your mind, but reaches into your soul. We explore the inner world here, the shadows, the questions, the awakening. And I'd love to hear from you. What part of this video hit home the most? What insight or lesson are you walking away with today? Drop it in the comments below. Sometimes, your words might be the reflection someone else has been waiting for. See you in the next video. Until then, stay curious, stay human, and above all, stay real.